Good evening. Did you already open the meeting? Okay, sorry, jeez. Good evening, my apologies for the tardiness. Welcome to the Monday, May 8th Education and Supplementary meeting of the Board of School Directors. I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Copeland.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We have two presentations tonight. Let's begin, Dr. Everslag, with new textbook adoptions.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Good evening, everyone. I'll have the fortune of presenting to you twice this evening. The first one I'll be pinch hitting for Mr. Cody and giving a summary of our textbook recommendations for textbook adoptions. These three textbook adoptions were presented, that are going to be presented this evening, were shared and discussed during the May 3rd Curriculum Committee of the board meeting. We were fortunate to have our department chairs, teachers, and supervisors that got into the nitty-gritty of the textbook series that were being presented. These adoptions have been identified as needed resource renewals and have been budgeted as part of our annual curriculum review cycle. All three of these textbook resources have been vetted by members of the curriculum team and teachers in these respective departments. During the budgetary planning process this year, funding for these expenses has been allocated in the 2017-2018 proposed budget. Additionally, these anticipated expenses for the resources were shared and discussed during all curriculum budget update meetings, including the Public Finance Committee meeting on curriculum, the session that was on April 5th, 2017. With the board's approval, the resources will be forwarded to the business meeting next Monday. The purchasing meeting this Thursday, and then the business meeting next Monday for authorization for purchase. These resources will be purchased in the 2017-18 fiscal year with a fall 2017 adoption. All three of these resources contain both digital and print version. So I'll talk about each of the three textbook adoptions requests. Or proposals, I should say. First is for secondary Spanish, grades 6 to 12, levels 1 through 4. It's a resource called Auténtico. It is essential for student learning that middle and high school programs are well articulated and transition smoothly. The secondary world language department is currently working without unified resources between the schools. The current resources are outdated and not aligned to current standards. There are multiple resources with a range of text dating back to 2004. As the department continues the articulation process and the upgrade of the world language curriculum, having a central resource would benefit both students and overall programmatic success. During the evaluation process, the department evaluated the resource based on alignment with the ACTFL standards. ACTFL is the American Council for the Teaching of Foreign Language. The evaluation of the text included assuring the 5 C's, communication, culture, connections, comparisons, and communities were appropriately included in the resource. Multiple resources were examined during this process. As such, Mr. Cody and the World Language Department is recommending the purchase of Auténtico Spanish textbooks with 2018 copyright for grades 6 through 12 at a cost of $171,979.85. The second resource that we are proposing is a high school health text. The high school health course is currently delivered to all 10th grade students as a graduation requirement with a primary resource that is outdated. The resource is 15 years old and in poor condition. Teachers are accessing supplemental materials, both digital and print, in order to meet the current demands of content within the course. Teachers also have to continually search and find updated and relevant statistics, as those printed in the book are around 15 years old. Many of those printed statistics have changed dramatically since the early 2000s. But not only the statistics, but the health issues addressed in the resource are making the resource itself obsolete. Current statistics and topics that are included in the new resource, which are not in the old, are vast. Many of those include Zika virus, identity theft, internet violence, opioid use, transgender issues are some of the issues that are addressed in the resource that are not in our current materials. There's also relevant mental and emotional health topics, including managing stress. 10th graders across the district take health as a graduation requirement and access the resource. Mr. Lilly, supervisor of many departments, including secondary health and phys ed, and the high school health departments, are recommending the purchase of a text called Comprehensive Health. This book has a 2018 copyright, was created by the Pennsylvania Health and Physical Education Teacher of the Year for high school health classes at the cost of $32,790.27. That would be for textbooks for 10th graders. Around 675 students are serviced by that every year, 10th grade in both buildings. Our third and final resource that we are proposing is the high school anatomy and physiology course that is currently delivered as a secondary elective at both high schools. It has a resource that's also outdated. However, while the text and lab manuals were purchased in 2006, this request is more related to the condition of the resource as opposed to the changing of the curriculum. The resources are currently in poor condition, especially the lab manuals, which are not hardbound. Teachers also seek to supplement the materials, both digital and print, to support their teaching. And there are some, of course, some things that are outdated in the book, but it's more due to the deterioration of the resource itself than the changing curriculum. But there are additional topics in the new resource, including Botox injections, performance-enhancing drugs, and HGH. The high school health department, the high school Science Department is recommending the purchase of the Essentials of Human Anatomy and Physiology 12th edition textbooks. It's a 2018 copyright, and the Essentials of Human Anatomy and Physiology lab manuals for high school anatomy and physiology courses at the cost of $28,078.29. I know we had an opportunity to discuss this at the curriculum committee of the board, but take any questions that we may have about the textbook purchases.
Thank you, Dr. Everslard. Questions? Dr. Gilbert, please.
No, I just want to let everybody know that we discussed these thoroughly at the curriculum committee meeting, and there was a lot of discussion around, what was the process for us choosing these resources, why did we need new resources, what was that from a curriculum perspective, as well as discussing the cost, but that the committee voted to move it to facilities and purchasing for review as purchases. And so that hasn't taken place yet. That will take place on Thursday. But that's where we are now. And instead of having the teachers came in on Wednesday, come in again, I asked Dr. Everslage to do it this way because we have the sort of major report of the strategic plan that's coming. We wanted to make sure that we had enough time to discuss that as well. So I just wanted to give everybody the context for that.
Any additional questions on textbooks? Mr. Driscoll?
Thank you, Mr. Everslage. I just want to read from the curriculum meeting last week, both the current Spanish textbooks and I thought the current health book were in the neighborhood of 10 years old. Does that sound about right? I mean, it's not like they are pretty past useful life, I think, as textbooks go. Is that accurate statement?
All of these resources are over,
All
10,
three of them.
are over 10 years old.
Okay, thank
But
you.
in terms of both the, I just want to be clear, and I think you said this, but there was a lot of discussion, especially from the Spanish teachers around how much the curriculum has changed in terms, for Spanish, and how these are resources that are, they're not the curriculum, they supplement the curriculum, but how there were a lot of different resources that came with these textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Additional questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Our second presentation is, we're coming to the second year, the ending of the second year of implementation of the district strategic plan. And I know there's been a lot of activity this year. We wanted to summarize that for the board and public. And we're also going to be taking this information in a detailed way back to the original stakeholder group and talking with them about it. And then we'll have a plan for greater community distribution. So I can't do drum roll, so, but others can. So, Dr.
There's a lot of good energy in here. We went from the wave to the drum roll. So, so I'm pleased to present to you an update on the strategic plan. with me Ms. Megan Schaefer and Mr. Jason Potton, who have served as the co-coordinators of the strategic plan process, are here with me and help to help piece this presentation together. We have had the opportunity to present multiple times throughout the year on the strategic plan and provide updates to the community. So we want to continue that, but also move towards it more. We're moving towards the end of the year and provide somewhat of a kind of an annual summary of where we have the work that's been done throughout the year. Certainly the work of the strategic plan doesn't necessarily align with the school calendar always. So the work of the strategic plan is ongoing. We'll continue in the summer. Many of the things that we're working on will continue into next year. But we thought it would be valuable for the to communicate clearly with the community where we have been this year and provide not only talk about how the plan, the strategic plan, has guided us and guided our thinking, but there have been several products that have been that we're very proud of that have resulted and emerged as a result of the plan. And what we are working towards is a executive summary document. Okay, so it's an upcoming product called an executive summary for 2016-17. It looks like this, and it's in. You have a draft of it in in board docs, and at this point is a 58-page document that has 30 different explorations that have been explored this year throughout the strategic plan, as well as a summary of 3 different topics that our research and development team has explored. There's also a lot of information about all the participants and people that have contributed to the plan. But the goal is to have this in the hands of our community in June. So all of our teachers, our staff, our community members, and our students, an opportunity to gather feedback from them throughout this process. And I'm going to take you through what's going to happen between now and June that'll help us get to a final product that we're going to be really proud to share. We have had, as I mentioned, we've communicated progress on the strategic plan throughout the year. We've held public board meetings and had updates in October 2016, and then January and March of 2017, and then again here in May. We've also provided newsletters and updates to our staff in August of 2016, and communication that's on the website and has been sent to the community in November of 2016. In January 2017. So we hope that this upcoming executive summary is a continuation of that and somewhat summarizes the good work that has been done and continues to move us in the direction that our strategic plan has led us. So as you recall, the strategic plan, there are 5 pathways that guide us through this strategic plan: transformative curriculum, redefining success, spirit of community, commitment to professional learning, and student-driven schools. Each pathway had an original strategic intent that was specified in the creation of the plan, the work of the strategic plan, and the original strategic plan committee created these pathways, and they have continued to guide us. We continue to operate in a method that has pathway teams. We have teams for each of the pathways, and we have a lot of staff members and community members volunteering for those pathways. And I have color-coded on the bottom these circles, and the circles are color-coded through this presentation and also through the executive summary that somewhat guide what each of the pathways were originated from. So the pathway teams explored a range of topics throughout the year. The purpose of the executive summary is really to provide an overview of these explorations, including some background information, the current situations, and some recommendations. Some of the explorations resulted in recommended actionable steps. Others call for further investigation, and there were others that, after looking into, the pathway teams did not recommend that we would move forward. So I know there's a lot of text on this, but it'll take us through a little bit of the process that's happened between April and June so that we can really deliver a great product that summarizes our work. So the only of these that is complete is really the first topic. The pathway work for the year was captured in summary briefs by each area of exploration throughout the year, and that was compiled in April 2017. We've placed that information in this draft document, and summaries are synthesized and presented in the executive summary draft document. This was shared with the board. Tomorrow, we'll actually be sharing this draft document with the pathway participants and the steering committee members, and we'll be inviting them to join us for a meeting on May 31st. We'll invite all of the steering committee members back to join us on the 31st. And the idea of that meeting is to ask them to really look at the explorations that the pathway teams have taken, the recommendations that they've made, and ground ourselves in the original strategic intent of the plan. So the steering committee members are really part of the creation of the document. And are we on the right path? Are we aligned still philosophically with the plan? We will gather feedback on the 31st from the steering committee members, and we will make any revisions to the executive summary document. And then that document will be finalized and disseminated to the community, including staff, students, and families. And we'll also, of course, will make this public and have printed hard copies available in this building and in all of our buildings. So the executive summary recommendations with the stakeholder feedback have a big influence for us moving forward in a lot of ways, including they could drive the ongoing pathway work, inform new explorations and research, establish priorities for 2017-18 and beyond, and inform the administration about potential administrative steps or actions that need to occur. It's really important to note that the pathway recommendations are not formal requests for board action or formal requests for policy change. There are some recommendations that pathways have made throughout the document that may require some level of administrative action or board action. In that case, we certainly will go through the process and take that we normally would go through in any policy change. But these are strictly at this time pathway recommendations. So we're going to talk just a little bit about each of the pathway teams and some of the recommendations that were made. Of the 30 explorations, each of them are going to be listed in this document and in this presentation. Not going to go into depth of each of the 30. For the sake of time, but I hope that you get a sense of what the explorations are. Each of these has a 1 to 2 page summary of each of these topics, of the thoughts of each of the pathway team related to each of these topics. So if you look at the transformative curriculum, there were several explorations that the transformative curriculum pathway pursued in 2016. Those explorations are listed down the left-hand column. In the right-hand column is status and a very, very brief recommendation, a summary of the recommendation. Those are categorized either as established, ongoing, long-term, or complete. So if it's established, actually there's only a couple that are established, meaning transformative goals upgrading instructional units are established. That's been created. It's been part of our current practice, and it will continue to be part of our practice. Most of the recommendations are on the ongoing status, meaning there's been some movement on them, but there's some additional continued progress needed. For example, the K-12 computer science curriculum, when we're looking at revising the computer science experiences, K to 8, and I'm going to talk about that briefly. There obviously is a lot of work that goes into that. We've made some strides on that, but we still have additional work to be done. So that's why it would fall in the ongoing category. But the explorations for transformative curriculum were the transformative goals, the upgrading instructional units, K-12 computer science, maker mentality, maker space, the high school pathways for learning, high school interdisciplinary programs, the inclusion of writing centers at the high school, and a K-12 digital portfolio for student work. For each of the pathways, I'm going to share some celebration and give some examples. So for transformative curriculum, there were some celebrations and accomplishments throughout the 16-17 year. The adoption of the transformative goals is certainly a celebration. The engagement in the unit upgrade process was certainly a celebration. Creation of maker spaces, they've been established in all elementary schools. The adoption of the new computer science seminar course at the high school and the adoption of the new computer design course at the high school are certainly accomplishments that we are proud of. I want to talk briefly about the transformative goals. We've talked about those not only in this setting and in public, but what we haven't really talked about as much is when we say that they're established, I'm not sure if people realize fully how much the transformative goals are driving our work. When we're in the midst of all of our curriculum review, evaluation of curriculum documents, and even adoption of resources, alignment with the transformative goals is paramount to that thought process. We want to have culturally relevant experiences for our students in the classroom. Therefore, we have to craft curriculum that's culturally relevant. We have to plan for resources that are culturally relevant, and we have to review and analyze our curriculum in a critical way to make sure that it is meeting our goals. And if not, we need to make necessary revisions. We've already engaged in some processes of revising curriculum with the transformative goals leading that way. It's been really exciting to see. Our 9th grade English teachers got together from both schools and were really revising and took a critical eye to their curriculum, and the transformative goals completely drove that process. So I'm pleased that they're not only going to be established, but they're going to continue to be part of our work moving forward, including transitioning smoothly to the upgrading of instructional units, which we also was a highlight this year, but we also foresee as being part of our regular culture moving forward. We're recommending including professional learning time annually for teachers to engage in the unit upgrade process, and the transformative goals would, of course, drive that. One of the things that we're particularly recommending next year, if you look at that third bullet, it really recommends not only systematizing teacher practice with upgrading instruction units, but aligning that with the other professional learning work that's going on in the district. So we've started a lot of work this year on assessment design and building assessment literacy in our staff. That's a professional learning priority for next year. So as we engage in the unit upgrade process next year, we not only see the transformative goals driving that process, but our work with assessments to be connected with that. So when teachers are upgrading instructional units next year, they'll be looking at the assessment system of assessments within that unit and making sure it's aligned with the transformative goals. I also fully understand that talking curriculum is more exciting for me than it is for most of the public, so I'm trying to sell the enthusiasm. Another highlight for the transformative curriculum is the computer science, maker mentality, and coding. And I mentioned this briefly, but some of this is an ongoing effort. But we're looking to ensure that there are guaranteed coding, programming, app creation, and STEM experiences built into the curriculum, not a la carte experiences based on teacher either competency or desire. So we are looking at existing units that are being reviewed and revised to include STEM experiences that are built in to enhance the unit. Maker mentality is being fostered by embedding guaranteed maker experiences for students as well. And each of the maker spaces are being improved to include more materials. And the maker mentality is beyond what a maker space is, but having a maker space with adequate materials is certainly important. And so items such as robotics, Legos, Connects, clay, and 3D is going to be available in all of the maker spaces, and we'll have 3D printers in all 10 schools to start next year. So as we move to our second pathway in redefining success, the explorations that we had with redefining success were grade weighting, class rank, valedictorian, salutatorian, grade point average, elementary report cards, and skill-based grade reporting. Many of these are centered around redefining success. We looked at some of the traditional measures of success and try to connect those with some of our original plan, and I'll give you an update on some of that. So most of the celebrations of 2016-17 celebrations and accomplishments for Redefining Success is we started the year with a revised secondary grading scale as we're looking at grading practices more broadly. Early feedback on that is that's going well, and we're pleased with that transition. We created an AP testing calendar to help minimize assessment conflicts for students, and there were several prototypes that were initiated throughout the district in the Redefined Success category, including quarterless grading, mastery quizzes in chemistry and other classes, but chemistry was a big shift for them. Live Art Portfolio magazine was created across 4 art courses. There was blended learning experimentation in the Spanish courses, standards-based assessment in Spanish, and a teacher-student computer science course collaboration, which we really had a student almost co-teach the class with a teacher. It was really a neat collaboration that happened at Lower Merion High School in one of the computer science classes. So focused on the Redefined Success explorations, many of those focused around grading and grade reporting. So I just want to provide some clarity where we stand with that. There are strong interconnections between the recommendations from the pathway and the explorations. Obviously, grade weighting, class rank, GPA inclusion, valedictorian, there's strong interconnections between those. Because the pathway recommended that we explore these more deeply, we obviously, and there's policy changes connected to this, we clearly have to go through a deeper vetting of these and involve the community, involve students more systematically, gather feedback, and bring the community into the dialogue around this. We are not recommending any of these for adoption for 2017-18. The exploration will be in 2017-18 a little more officially with some recommendations perhaps in the fall of 2017-18 for adoption in 2018-19. If these are pursued, then obviously there'll be more formal policy revision that would have to accompany that. I know you're all wondering what we're going to be doing on May 31st at the CCOB meeting, so let me share with you one of the things that we'll bring forward is, that I'm actually really proud of, is we've had a group of teachers at the elementary level that have really dove into the elementary report card and looked at improving the elementary report card. They have a new model in place that we're working on. We're continuing to work on the next couple weeks and be ready to propose as a pilot for 2017-18 in one grade. But the new report card for that grade will have improved readability, expanded narrative, closer alignment with standards, and expanded reporting. The part that I'm really excited about is just expanded reporting to define success more broadly, including some language to foster growth mindset, innovation, and other measures of habits of mind, as opposed to some of the comments on report cards that have been rather traditional in defining success. Not that that information isn't helpful, but it is a change that we'll be proposing on a pilot basis. Shifting to the student-driven schools pathway, the explorations for 16-17 included strengthened 9th grade transition program by exploring the Scarsdale High School model, which we visited Scarsdale last summer with a couple things in mind. One of them had nothing to do with 9th grade transition or their guidance program, but we left there really impressed with that aspect of it and wanted to explore that further to see if we can to enhance our 8th to 9th grade transition to a school that did it really well. So that's an ongoing exploration. Their elementary student-driven learning plans, Genius Hour, elementary and middle school electives, physical education waivers for high school students in interscholastic athletics, and student voice. Some celebrations for the student-driven schools pathway included, we conducted student focus groups at all 3 levels. We expanded course choice. You might have heard about this. We changed the middle school schedule, and so with that change, we actually really proud of where we are with that and the expanded middle school choice for electives for middle school students. Prototype Genius Hour at the middle school level, and increased the elementary school physical activity time. I'm going to talk more about that at the end when we talk about the R&D subcommittee. One highlight from the pathway is the student-driven learning plans, and this is something that we'll be exploring throughout next year. Currently, there are spring conferences at the elementary school that are student-led conferences that are goal-setting. We love that element of the elementary conferences, and hope to expand that. So, guided by the transformative goals, we're looking to have students be the drivers of more formal goal setting at the elementary level, where they're crafting some long-term goals and reporting on those throughout the year. We'll have a subcommittee working to expand this throughout next year, and this is a recommendation that's going to be forwarded to our GO team with some assistance with implementation. And then we're also going to be looking at goal setting with secondary students as well through 17-18. Two more pathways. So, the commitment to professional learning pathway. The explorations for 16-17 included an instructional coaching model, which is generating some time and good energy, and we're in the midst of that, looking for potentially a 18-19 adoption of that. Assessment literacy and improving our skills for teachers and administrators around assessment, looking for a lesson study protocol. And we are in the midst of establishing a long-term professional learning plan, which we will be presenting to the Academic Council in early June. Some celebrations and accomplishments in professional learning. We held Ed Camps as a professional learning model at every building, and we're going to be doing so on June 19th, district-wide level. We're excited about the Ed Camps and the energy around our staff. Ed Camps is our staff helping one another. Ed Camps is a model for professional learning where we call upon the expertise of teachers to help one another, and to ideas that are generated from teachers of takeaways that they can have right away. So it's really a lot of autonomy in Ed Camp and relevant professional learning that's very job embedded. We're moving towards the professional learning model being more job embedded. That was one example. The Pathway team read Drive by Daniel Pink, and the ideals of Drive have informed the tenets of the professional learning plan, and the notion of that is, what drives people, and what motivates people, and really the tenets are, sense of purpose, a desire for mastery, and autonomy. Building a professional learning plan around that is key for having staff being really focused on having purpose and drive in their own learning. In our Spirit of Community pathway, explored two areas throughout 16-17, Community Engagement Management System and the Community Resource Network, and there are recommendations for each of those, including the recommendation to adopt Razor's Edge. I know there's a fiscal component of that, so that'll provide some more formal recommendations moving forward. And the Community Resource Network has begun to take form, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Some celebrations and accomplishments. I met with key communicators, constituent groups throughout the year, including young alumni, university leadership, realtors, faith leaders, other members of the community. Develop the Community Resource Network to support the curricular and co-curricular experiences, provide guidance on development and engagement initiatives. Enhance communication among and between different aspects of our community, including ISC, the Education Foundation, the Alumni Association, and the district. And of course, we're proud of the website launching that also occurred this year as another way to engage the community. The Community Resource Network is developing a network made up of community resources representing a range of disciplines and interests. The network will support sharing new and interesting ideas across disciplines and connecting, community with school. I think we know it's an ongoing challenge for school districts to really have meaningful connections with the communities in which they reside. And relationships can be good, but true network of support and having that working relationship is key. And we hope that the Community Resource Network is a vehicle to help us get there in a more genuine way. They're compiling a comprehensive database of volunteers in various disciplines, and are planning an annual event to highlight the coordinated efforts between the resource network and the district. And in addition to the pathway work, and also summarized in the executive summary document, are the work of the research and development subcommittees. The 3 subcommittees were formed under the research and development umbrella of the plan. And the R&D part of the plan is meant, or R&D subcommittee is meant to be somewhat not necessarily specifically connected to a pathway, but really involved in researching a particular idea. So the three subcommittees each researched a specific topic. They were recess at the elementary school, mindfulness in the schools, and adolescent sleep and school start times. And there are 2-page summaries of the progress for each of those included in the executive summary, as well as longer white papers which will be more formally submitted for each. Just to give you a brief update on each of those. Recess at the elementary school, that white paper has already been submitted, and there were recommendations made 2 months ago in March of to add some additional 15 minutes of physical activity period to the elementary schools. It's currently being piloted at all 6 elementary schools. The other recommendations included making sure that recess and physical activity periods are a protected part of the student's day. In other words, not used as a consequence of removal of recess or physical activity because of a behavioral consequence. The recommendation included a standard inclement weather policy should be developed, and to continue to provide training for our recess staff using the responsive classroom model. And we are moving forward with continuing to train on the responsive classroom. The committee is still meeting, and it is gathering feedback on the physical activity pilot, and will be making a recommendation for the 17-18 school year. The second subcommittee was mindfulness in the schools, and the mindfulness white paper is going to be submitted in early June, so it's almost completed. The mindfulness task force looked at whether or not how mindfulness should be included in our schools, K-12. And they looked at it from a student lens and also from a staff lens, and there are recommendations for both of those. So they also studied some models of how mindfulness could be included in schools, and are going to be making specific recommendations for implementation in the white paper. And the third of the 3 R&D subcommittees was on adolescent sleep and school start time. We know that this has been discussed in the community for a couple years now, and we wanted to take a greater look at this from a research standpoint. There was a transportation study to review the logistical impact and fiscal impact on the district. So that's being studied in conjunction with broader research, as well as community surveys and focus groups that are going to be occurring shortly and then analyzed over the summer, that will be included in the recommendations and from the subcommittee in early fall. So just to kind of bring you back a little bit to some of the procedure, I know I talked a lot about the different steps that we're taking and different pathway explorations, but we have right now some recommendations from the pathways. We're going to be gathering a lot of information and feedback, including from you. The current revisions that are in the executive summary draft included the suggestions that were made at the CCOB meeting. So this is a different version that you have seen since last week, but we expect it to even change again after we get the feedback from the steering committee at the end of May, and look forward to having a really comprehensive explanation of the work that's been done and what will be done with the strategic plan moving forward. This time I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation, and all of the slides will be online, but they are already wonderful. Just a presentation piece, Dr. Everslot, that executive summary slide, I don't know if it's just showing up brightly on the monitor, or if it needs some color variation so that it might be a little more visible. I can see
Okay.
it fine on my iPad, but looking at it on the monitor, it might be a little difficult.
Okay, I can add some contrast
Okay,
before we
thanks.
distribute.
Thank you. And questions? Ms. Ackman?
Thanks. This was a great update, and there's a lot to be excited about in the presentation. So I won't talk about all the things, but one thing that I'm really excited about, which I've been wanting for a long time, is kind of a more hands-on learning in the STEM space, maker spaces, and 3D printers in all the schools. So that is really exciting. I will say that I think the Kinwood HSA fundraised for their 3D printer, and they're piloting ways to integrate it into the curriculum, which I'm sure you know, and I think they can provide some good models of how to do that. But I just wanted to hear maybe a little more about how you're conceiving that.
Sure. So I had the great pleasure of attending STEM night this week, which was really exciting to see
Yes.
the students engage with their families in the different STEM projects, and that a lot of the heart of that was the STEM cohort of teachers that have gone through coursework and collaboration time to help one another with those experiences. Kinwood is certainly a shining example of a really strong, they have a strong representation of the cohort and some strong STEM teachers that I think can add to the creating the guaranteed experiences. One of the things that I mentioned briefly, but taking those experiences for those that are really comfortable and helping staff members that are learning that is part of our professional learning plan. And so that there are those guaranteed maker experiences for students, guaranteed coding experiences, and not just in computers or tech ed classes, but embedded across disciplines. And so there's, and I had a hard time wrapping my head around this as well. But there's coding experiences in elementary literacy course, and so what does that look like? I don't know if I could properly explain it, but I can tell you that that's part of the curriculum writing that we're doing.
I'll just add, I think that's one thing about this that is so innovative, that you're not going to isolate it and kind of consider these things like a special or a one-off, or it's much more integrated broadly, or the intention is to integrate it more broadly across the curriculum, so it doesn't seem like science or seem like technology, which I found sometimes there's some cultural norms that can be tough to overcome. So I'm really excited. I guess I didn't really have a question other than I think it's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, you have anything? No pressure, I'm sorry.
Actually, I do, but it's just a lot to digest everything, and I actually read through the summary that we had, the 50-pager, and my question is more one of process in terms of going forward, and one of the things I was thinking about, and even in terms of some of the things are easy to appreciate, such as what Lloyd just brought up, the maker spaces and the STEM stuff, and other things which would sort of broadly encompass policy, curriculum, and facilities all at the same time. And I guess my question would be, to what extent is even when the executive summary is after it goes to the big committee, the steering committee, and then gets approved, what happens next? In other words, when you look at the slide, the executive summary, the first one, it says, the path of recommendations are not formal requests for board action or policy change. At what point do they become that, and how? And one of the questions I had, I guess maybe for my board members, is should we, at what point does it come to the board, and whether there should be some kind of, like even an ad hoc committee or something that would deal with issues that would encompass all the committees, the three committees that would be involved in a lot of the
Yeah.
decisions that overlap.
So that's a great question. And when we gathered pathway teams, we wanted teachers or members of our community that really love that pathway and connect with it and can generate ideas, but may not, operationalizing that or making it come to reality may not be their thing. We don't necessarily want that to be a limitation for their involvement. So what we have, the system that we have in place, and it's not perfect, but we have a Go team, and the Go team is strongly administrative. There's it's strong administrative presence in the Go team, but there's also teacher representation from each building, and that's really about, all right, the pathway team says we have this idea, but we don't know what to do next to make it a reality. And then, so we kind of discuss it amongst ourselves, Ms. Schaefer, Mr. Potton, and I, and we say this might be a good recommendation for the Go team that can help us take the next steps to operationalize it. And in some cases, it might be, Ms. Schaefer crafting and leading a policy step. Another way it might be teachers going back to buildings and having smaller conversations. It depends on what the recommendation would be. So
the big,
go ahead.
yeah, so the big picture is, stakeholders in the community came together, they formulated a strategic plan. The strategic plan then, as I understand it, was formally presented to the Board of Education, and the Board of Education took a resolution to accept the strategic plan, sort of writ large. Then the strategic plan goes back to the administration and the professional staff. We come up with some of the kinds of things that you've seen here tonight. Those are then brought to, at least annually, to the stakeholder team, but at every CCOB meeting, most of these things that have gotten to the point of fruition come to CCOB. The board gives feedback, the community gives feedback, and then we're sort of off and running, as it were, in the example of the middle school schedule. We haven't, I don't believe, gotten, I'm just looking over these, some areas that would really require board policy yet. I'm not sure about, I have to look at the policy to see if GPA is there, or some things like that. And clearly, some of these things require funding, which the board votes on. So you could, like Congress, you could not fund us, and then we wouldn't do it. And so that's really been the process. I don't see anything yet that comes into the area of policy, but that's not to say that that won't be at some point.
Sorry, just one quick thing on my last point is that the Community Resource Network, I think, could really help with helping to potentially staff or integrate some of these new makerspaces and STEM opportunities. And I'm sure there are community members who would be delighted to get involved.
I just want to add one more piece to Mr. Fetterman's question, because I think it's a good one. We had board member representation on the steering committee, so that's another way that the board is represented, and then information comes back, and so there's this constant flow. So I think the important piece is, where policy is necessary, we will certainly engage it at that level, but there are a lot of administrative functions with actually making the strategic plan viable and a working, living, breathing document across the district. Diane, did I see your hand? Okay.
Thanks. I know it's hard because you had so much to cover in in a relatively short period of time, but we did talk about it a little bit too in the CCOB meeting. So thank you very much. As you start to see meat on some of these, on the bones of some of these things, it really does get pretty exciting. Just one comment. In the CCOB meeting, we did talk briefly about putting in contact information so that if members of the community have comments or input that they wanted to share, that there would be an easy way to reference that. So, I just looked through, I just compared the draft we got with the one that's most current, and It looks like they're still not in there. I don't know if that was, just hadn't gotten to it, or whether you decided not to do it. So I'm just wondering which it was.
No, it was not, just an oversight.
Okay.
Yeah,
We intend to.
Because,
but, yeah.
I mean, there are people who are going to look at this and go, wow, this is really exciting. I have 3 questions. Who do I ask?
Yep.
And so if we can find a way to create that easy connection, that would be
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah,
We'll be
one
sure
of the
to
things
do
we talked about at CCOB was we wanted, before this even hit the street, as it were, we want to make sure our stakeholder group gets a hold of it and does some revisions there. I've also talked with Mr. Young and indicated that we really need a communication plan for it and many of the elements in it, so we have to have that also.
I also really like the idea, I think it was Maureen's idea of, we talked about when we finally put the final draft together, which was to organize it not only by topics, but by grade level, so that parents could potentially go look and see, I have an elementary age child, these are the things I'm interested in, and I thought that was a useful idea also that came out of that discussion, so.
Anybody on the side? No pressure. Dr. O'Leary.
I just, could you talk a little bit more about unit upgrades and like sort of the status, and if you have any examples, and how people, I think it'll be hard for people to recognize a unit upgrade because you won't have the same kid in the same class 2 years in a row. So if you could just help us understand a little bit better what that will look like.
Can I just say one thing, that there was actually a presentation on unit upgrades that, I mean, please answer the question, but I'm trying to remember what date that was, if people wanted to see the entire presentation. And maybe there's a way to cross-list our board meetings with some of these topics for people, because there was, including, there was a really detailed presentation on that particular issue, and I agree that people generally wouldn't know what that meant, so.
But I can certainly speak to the upgrade process. We had teachers work in collaborative teams that had an established unit, and explored and examined that unit in relationship to the transformative goals. So with the transformative goals, they went through their units and saw which of the goals were met in an existing unit, and if they weren't, aspired to meet. So they really went in and rewrote the unit, rewrote through each of the understanding by design model of lesson design and unit design of designing it with that in mind. So in some cases we kept it open, or in some cases it was an upgrade of the assessment. In other cases it was a project that the students did. But what was great is the teachers were able to kind of compare before and after, and then we also gathered feedback of their upgrades, and were able to share those with other teachers that teach the same course across the district. So that last piece is not quite there yet, but we're gathering the information now.
November 14th was the board meeting, so if you go like on demand.
Yeah, and I think every time I hear the term, I'm going to ask you to describe it, because I think it's just amazing that you got every teacher in every classroom across the entire district to go through an intentional process to practice their craft a little better in a really concrete way, and I think it's an impressive accomplishment for an institution this size.
Thank you. And we were pleased with the teachers embraced it and want to continue to do this. They're making their instruction better. I mean, if it's in the most simple terms.
Thanks. There was a period of time where education shifted from the teacher standing in the front of the room delivering information to more student small group work and moving around, and education has really moved a great deal, and in this strategic plan we've been talking a lot about student driven and about You talked about the computer course where the student was kind of co-teaching it, and I'm sure there are people in the community who maybe don't have a rich understanding of how education is moving and why that's valuable. And if you could just talk a little bit about why student-driven curriculum is so valuable, and why that child, by having a student help with the instruction, is actually good for the student himself or herself, as well as good for his or her classmates. Can you just talk about that a little bit broadly?
Sure. Well, I think when we think of education, and I'm going to sound old when I say this, but when we went through, the teacher was the keeper of information. Teacher was the owner of information and imparted that on students. And it's just a different age now. It's an information age where kids have access to the information. I mean, we jokingly say to teachers, like, if it can Google the answer on your test, it's not, you're not asking the right questions, because any kid can do that. So what I think that's I think there's been a lot of positives as a result of that, and it's been shifting towards deeper level thinking skills that have been asked of students, and the more those frequently more complex tasks that involve a deeper exploration. And when the students have a vested interest in that, they're going to be more engaged. And so I think the art of designing lessons is to have this essential learning that every student has to meet, and think of these creative ways to help get students there. In an age when kids have information and we give them the tools to access it right at their fingertips. And so I know it's kind of a brief explanation, but I think it's really the key to the shift more than anything else.
So first of all, I just want to thank you for this presentation, and thank everybody who's worked really hard to do all of this work and put it together. And it's really exciting. And I think one of the things that just, I'm really happy with it is that, when we talked about what kind of strategic plan we wanted a few years ago, we talked about we really wanted a kind of a bottom-up plan that was really sort of innovative and creative and could help us think outside the box of sort of what kind of education did we all want for our students. And so, the fact that so much of this is driving everything we do. We didn't want a plan that was going to sit on a shelf and gather dust for 5 years until it was time to do the next one. And so, having regular reports at not only the CCOB meetings, the curriculum committee meetings, but these education meetings, I think has been really helpful to have us sort of see how this is coming along. So another kind of sort of piggybacking on Diane's question, I think, a lot of times we've been talking about wanting to increase sort of student voice and the ways in which we're trying to do that at all different levels. In some ways, it's a little bit easier to think of it at the high school level, middle school, and then it becomes a little bit harder at the elementary school. So I'm wondering if you could kind of share with us a little bit about, when you're talking about increasing student voice, when we're talking about in the context of the strategic plan, like, what does that actually mean? What are just a few examples? I realize you can't do more than that.
Because Mr. Potton has really led that with the student-driven schools pathway, I think I'll let him answer that, if that's okay.
Good evening.
We had to get
Thanks. With regard to student voice, right now, what we are looking at is with Dr. Overslag had mentioned the GO team. So currently, we are looking into how we're going to bring that to the district level. We have discussed the possibility in terms of there are different surveys that we've considered. There's the idea of the focus groups, which is something that we've done. Where we are right now is we've gathered as a group, what are the current ways that we kind of take input and get feedback from students? So we've taken a look at that, and then as we look at that from a bigger picture lens, what are some of those ideas when we look at the plan that we want to get some student voice back on? The first one that we looked at was where did they have choice, so to say, in their learning? So that was, gathered, that information was gathered and communicated back in terms of, for the strategic planning team. So what are some of those other ways that we're doing it? We're currently looking at different models of how we can do that. There are some ideas around what might be referred to as walkthroughs, where you get a group of people to perhaps go through a building, pull students out, ask them the same questions, and then gather that information. That's one way that we've seen, that collection of student voice done. We mentioned the idea of focus groups. There's surveys. So there are a lot of different ways that we're kind of looking into to do that. I think the other piece that we're looking into is how often. Is this going to be something that we want to do annually? Is this something that, as the need arises, how do we want to do that? When do we want to gather student voice, and to what extent? What grade levels? Does it vary? So we're currently in the process of getting all that information from a larger district perspective.
I think also we're going through a program evaluation of special education right now. So the program evaluator, Dr. Christina Paul, is also holding forums and groups of students and hearing that. The middle school schedule was a way of giving student voice and student choice. We're looking at a writing program next year and writing requirements in terms of research that came directly from listening to the alumni who came back and said this is something that we feel we could have done better in high school. And 2-3 times a year, I meet with what we call a student cabinet from the 2 high schools, and we run some of this stuff, by them. So both systemically and episodic, we continue in that direction.
I had a question, again, thank you for the presentation, a question around the ed camps, and wanted to hear a bit more about how we're engaging our teachers in this professional way of thinking, but also how does that compare with some turnaround training, given that we've had a number of consultants to come and deliver, on various subjects. So what does that look like in the context of the ed camps?
So we do have part of our understanding with our staff is if we send staff to training, that there's an expectation that they come back and turn that around. And so Ed Camps is one venue where staff that have attended conferences can come back and share with their peers. It's not the only venue. It could be department meetings, it could be faculty meetings, it could be academic council. There's other venues for that. But depending on what the training was and who the audience may be, it could be incorporated in the Ed Camp. One of the great things about Ed Camp is also one of its limitations is teachers really vote with their feet with where they want to go. There's options for where a teacher may want to, what session they may want to attend to enhance their own professional practice. And so we feel like having that choice embedded into the model will encourage investment and engagement. But that's why we balance Ed Camps with, there's other professional learning that's a little more directed. That there are times when we have to get all of our English teachers together working on one thing. And so our professional learning plan will have a balance of those two, some autonomy, but also some essentials, just like we would with students.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much. Does somebody else have a question? So we will now open it up for public comment, audience recognition. If you're interested in offering public comment, please sign in with Ms. LaPera. There is a 3-minute time limit, and if you could give us your name and generally where you reside in the district. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Jenkin, and I live in Wynwood. Last meeting was so late that I didn't have a chance to say what I wanted to say last time. With regards to the last meeting, we're all on the same page as far as wanting only the best for our children. It doesn't matter whether you're an MD, a PhD, an attorney, an educator, or none of these. What matters is that you are a parent, a member of the community, and you all want your children to be cared for and educated, to be able to go out into the world feeling confident and curious and kind. And that happens pretty well in Lower Merion School District. It has nothing to do with the creative accounting that the school board is a party to. The law says that you did something incorrectly, you should not have done. Fix it, move on. This should be over. We are not enemies, we are neighbors. And this is where we have to be. The school and the education is different than the financial things that's going on. The public mailing that went out that we just got did not have the suggestion that I had made of splitting the high schools into 9, 10, and 11, 12. The other thought that I had as I was kind of going through the community were some satellite schools, temporary renting of space in synagogues and some other empty school buildings that are within proximity to the school. For instance, Temple Beth David, which is walkable to Gladwin. I just wanted to also mention about the curriculum situation and the hands-on activity, the more maker activity, and the use of textbooks, which is really limiting that kind of activity, especially the health textbook. The health issues change very rapidly. Mental health, physical health, the pamphlets that are available from the Department of Health would be a much better updated kind of program that the students would be able to use more regularly. As far as the creativity and the hands-on work, and as Diane had said, that we are used to I'll take a Rose's turn. We're used to a much more authoritative method. We need to have more of a Socratic method. And I think that one of the things with this presentation is that, as we said, there's no meat on the bones. We're just getting outlines of theory. And we need to see how it actually gets implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kolish-Gottesman. I live in Marion Station. I have a student at Lower Marion High School and one at Marion Elementary. And just appreciating all the work that all of you do in your various roles. A lot of it thankless, I'm sure, dealing with these lawsuits and the enrollment increases and all this stuff. Big, complicated stuff. The issue that's really near and dear to my heart is the one that my high school student deals with 5 days a week, and the one that all the parents I know are most concerned about. And those of us who are talking about the upcoming election, it's the issue that's closest to us, and that's school start times. So I understand there's a task force. I'm really glad to hear it. I know that the American Association of Pediatrics came out with their very clear recommendation. It's been almost 3 years now, maybe 2.5 years. And I'm really eager for this process to move more quickly, to have a sense of urgency, because in the meantime, the issues that the AAP spoke to, which is, depression, mental health issues, safety. These kids are driving when they're not awake in the morning. Like one of these days, something terrible is going to happen. And then imagine the lawsuits we're going to get. So, my student is great academics, sports, jazz band, robotics. He's always tired. He's always been a great learner. He loved BC. He's not really excited about school this year. And I'm very sad about that. And I think part of it is the sleep issue, because when you're tired, you just can't thrive. So we have to find a solution. It's so complex, I know. It's the sports, it's the schedules, it's the other districts, it's the private schools. It's clearly complex. I really want to see us be solution-oriented, talk to districts across the country who have done this successfully, talk to all the districts that we play sports with. You know, I'm a professional facilitator. I'll organize a meeting. You know, like, how can the parents, those of us who are concerned, how can we help? And just make this, make this for the fall of 2018. Like, just do it. And even though it's not as big as the lawsuits and all, it's what our students face on a daily basis, and it impacts family life also. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Any more? Nope.
Do you want me to do it first? Super. Good evening. Sort of interesting to me that, oh, Rosa Sirota, sorry, I should know that by now, excuse me. Sort of interesting to me that we're talking about mindfulness, and we're talking about the starting of the school day. And I think the two go together because, especially for high school kids, and the last speaker made some really, really good points. I appreciate the points you made. And if you could sort of get that together, if you get the school day started later for our seniors, they go to bed incredibly late at night. And my grandson was up studying till like 2 o'clock in the morning sometime, which I thought was ridiculous. But he got very good grades. But I don't know what that meant with the rest of his physical activity and his well-being. I think mindfulness is so important because it can be started in the lower grades, and it can be started in a very reasonable way. With my kids, we came in, we had 2 minutes of mindfulness in the morning, and I was teaching elementary school, just to begin the day and, you know, get into it. After recess, we had 2 more minutes. After lunch, we had 2 more minutes, and at the end of the day, we had 2 more minutes. And those are techniques, and those are techniques that a lot of adults, you know, I can relax for 5, 10, sometimes 20 minutes. But I took a class in that. But little kids come to it so naturally. You know, it's so easy for them to do. Then it becomes a part of their whole being. And if you start that off in the elementary school with like 6 or 7 minutes a day, you would be surprised about what a difference that makes. And if you carry it on through middle school and high school, you get kids that are in a different zone, and they're in a place for learning that is so much more, that they're able to get to it so much easier because their minds aren't cluttered. So I think the start day and some mindfulness, and it'd be great for your staff, it'd be great for you all. I mean, that's where it starts. The adults have to learn about mindfulness before they can teach the children, and it's not complicated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you for coming. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Copeland.
You would ask me to say
Sorry,
something.
I was about to shut it down.
Just a couple of comments. I would have to respectfully disagree that the district did anything wrong in the budgeting. I think we've done a lot of presentations this year, and I think that that's not accurate. We didn't have a separate suggestion on 9, 10, and 11, 12. One of the things that the district had done some number of years ago was take a look at the transportation impact just at the current times that we have now. I know one of the things that has been mentioned is that if we had, say, 9th and 10th grade at Lower Marion, 11th and 12th grade at Harriton, that was just one suggestion. Actually, when the district did a survey some years ago, it actually found out that the flow of traffic at that point, not only 4 or 5 years ago, was actually more at Harriton than at Lower Merion. And we've asked our traffic person to go back and take a look at that again next fall. The start time, actually, Dr. Christina Paul went to a conference in Washington, D.C. on school start time, and they actually said, if you're looking into this, take your time, go slow, because districts have found that when they've rushed into it, they've had, unintended consequences. So we are looking at it with some deliberation. We are looking at things like what other schools have done it, what worked, what didn't work. And this fall, they'll give at least an interim report as to what their findings are after having, had some focus groups and so forth and so on. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.